Now we'll be live on YouTube. Yep, we're now going live on YouTube and waiting for Instagram. We are now live on Instagram. I gotta let this YouTube warm up. Alrighty, here we go. And then here comes. Nope. Wow.
Boom, everything blew up. Crash.
How did that sound to you?
I could hear it. Sounded all right.
All right, cool. It was a little like wacky on mine. Yeah.
Right.
No, but it came through Instagram. But all right, we are live. Hello. This is the third episode, which kind of runs us off track of our previous counting, which was like at 122 or something like that.
Why'd you start
re-recorded, but this is episode 3. I can go back in there and do that. All the episodes that we're doing live, I am putting on the binge playlist. So kids can go back.
I would think that would introduce confusion to anybody that was binging every episode and then didn't realize why the numbers got started. Because if you just keep the numbers going, it's more chronological. I don't think it makes a difference what format we're on.
Yeah, I agree. I was just so happy and excited to be doing a live thing.
Welcome, everybody.
You know that
this is a sci-fi post-apocalyptic comic book being made live on the air every Sunday for about 45 minutes or an hour as we chit-chat and talk. Kurt is right there inking issue number 1 of Turbo Pit Fighter, and I'm penciling issue number 2 of Turbo Pit Fighter. I'm working on page 20, just finishing it up. And all I got to do right now is just kind of put in the remaining background indications, which is, I don't know, I'm just putting in these little like crumbly bits here so that you can do your thing. There's not a lot of extra room. And you can see this page is kind of packed in. Some of my pages are getting pretty packed in. I don't know if I can adjust that and make them a little less packed in, but maybe.
Are you worried about like text?
No, it's all fitting together. I think, I don't think it's a bad page. I don't think it's overly done. It's just very dense, as far as comics go. Black and white indie comic, and so right now I'm just going to work on this last panel where Sister Ray, the hot nun, is in her garters and her ears are ringing because they just fired a shot real close to her ears. And then also Turbo's blowing somebody else away over here. Yeah, so I just need to draw the altar, and I'm going to get my blue line pencil. Kurt is doing the panel where young Turbo, aged, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 range, sticks a knife in the back of a soldier, makes a run for it, and escapes to the doggy door.
Classic.
They'll still have doggy doors in the future. 200
years from now.
So, how's your week? What's going on? What's new? You were telling me that there was some breaking news about the AXA property that we covered in one of our recent comics that influence.
Yeah, Trend Productions looks like they're back online.
Oh wait, before we get into that, just want to remind people, if you're watching us on Instagram, that's great. Feel free to leave a comment or whatever, but we can see it live. But you're better off going over to YouTube. You can see our our full display, and I'm gonna do the Trump thing again with my fingers. You can see the full frame of both of us in split screen, and whereas on Instagram you're only seeing like maybe like a quarter of each of our frames as we draw live, and you might be missing some action if you're actually trying to watch us draw. But most people are just listening to us anyway. So, Kurt, you were saying that Dren Productions on Substack was the licensee of George Romero's AXA property. This was like a UK comic strip that was printed over years in like in the daily papers or one of those periodicals. Later,
it was The Sun, I think.
Oh, really? Right. Okay. So the British Sun paper, I think that was one of Rupert Murdoch's papers, and then it was serialized. You know, those little strips like Modesty Blaze or whatever. They show you like 3 panels, and then at some point in the 80s or 90s, it was completely reimagined for Eclipse Comics by the artist, page by page in comic book format. Written by Chuck Dixon in the AXA #1 and then AXA #2 floppies, which are really worth trying to get. I only have one of them, and we covered it on a recent episode of Comics That Influence. If you check again on our YouTube channel, but what's the update, Kurt? What are you hearing?
Well, you know, the campaign had gotten shut down the time you were reviewing AXA, and it was basically a copyright strike. I am kind of paraphrasing that word strike, which in other words put halt to it because the estate of Romero was disputing or was in some sort of transitional state. So you know, it looks like things got worked out, which is always a good thing because I think with anything, let's call old and obscure in art, comic books specifically, if you get the opportunity to reprint it, I say take that chance. You might not even make any money. You probably might end up putting money into it, but it does put it back out there and it will catch some eyes, you know, maybe a dozen people, but it might catch some eyes that drag some people into comics either again or for the first time.
Dren Productions is relatively unknown, but they do have a presence on Kickstarter and Substack.
Yeah.
And they apparently had a license while George Romero was old and alive to work with by promoting the AXA property. AXA is just like kind of like this female like sword slinger in this sci-fi domed world, right? And she's like alluring bikini babe, you know. So it's kind of like, you know, heavy metal style content, you know, good sci-fi stuff. You know, we covered it. The art's nice. The sensibility is campy and fun, you know, like a Barbarella kind of thing. But George Romero got old. Dren Productions said, "Hey, we love this. Can we make new episodes?" It seems like when Romero was alive, he was okay with it. But the only thing they put in writing said that Dren Productions had the ability to promote AXA projects, and I don't think Romero like buttoned up his legal language on the thing that he signed. It's, you know, giving them, you know, either the rights to do continuing AXA stories in perpetuity, nor did he say they couldn't. So the family is now left putting an injunction because Dren Productions set up this whole LLC called AXA, like 2035 LLC, whatever they called it. And they were not only promoting new comics, which they had been making fast and furiously, and as Kurt says, they were probably putting their own money into it at a loss, but who knows? And on their website, they have these pie in the sky plans to make movies, you know, big budget movies. They were throwing around, you know, $1 million price tags for production and all this stuff. And to me that says they were shopping in around Hollywood. And there is a chance it clicks because AXA is in the back of people's minds in Britain and maybe even in the U.S. Some people, indie comic, connoisseurs might know that, but by and large, it's a lost property, and people are just saying, "Hey, could we do something with this? If so, who? What's the money split?" And so, how much do you know about going forward? What the arrangement is?
I don't know anything. There was some mention on there. Now, I do think there is another company trying to do the whole movie thing. I don't believe Dren is. I know Dren's not big enough to tout a Hollywood.
Right. No, it sounds like somebody optioned it off Dren.
I don't know if it's
after Romero died.
But I think, the one thing I'm curious is, we'll have to do maybe a little bit more digging, but is how is the family wanting to control it? Because sometimes families really don't want anything to do with it, yet at the same time, they don't want to be misjudged or misplaced or so they do kind of trust individuals, but then that trust is really just based on them getting to know the individual and maybe seeing, doing a test project. So I'm kind of curious if this is something Dren's doing to get maybe eyeballs back to AXA, and then maybe that's put on top of a proposal to get an animation or movie or whatever it is. So,
it's a great example. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you could show, some
good faith,
some interest, definite. Well, you put a podcast together and 150 people. It doesn't sound like a lot. Well, to jump ship from AXA over to Deathstalker, the old 80s sword and sorcery films. Slash from Guns N' Roses put his name on a presentation to reboot Deathstalker as comics, and some of the digging because Dan Snoke from Rave Sensation did something on Revision. Yeah, Rave Sensation is it appears that they're trying to get Hollywood to say, wow, look, you've got, I don't know, 1,000 or so many people that really like the comic book. Maybe we can spread this back over, back into movies or animation or gaming or, because it does carry, canon, I think is probably one of the more important parts of getting an established IP. Whether it's so it's so obscure, it doesn't matter. You don't have to put the work in to start from zero. You can start from 42 and then put 43
there's a comic.
What I mean?
Yeah, there's a history out. There's comics that are already out, and when you're invoking a name, it's relying on the comics. It's a great shortcut. So I just want to say, like, this whole thing with AXA. This is just one illustration of what's going on all over the place as people are jockeying around for using old IP, whether that's public domain or, in this case, something that's still family owned, but a creator has passed, and and it's still a cool idea, a viable idea. They need lots of ideas, and it's like a comic is like a shortcut for the studios, because otherwise they need an artist to lay everything out in some art or some breakdowns or some storyboards, so that you could sell it in a presentation to your funders and get the thing green lit. They need to see something, and you could just plop the comic down and say, well, this is a tie-in to a well-known character from the 80s, that is going to be disappearing unless we do something about it. And Slash might be a comic nerd or whatever, or maybe he just likes B movies or whatever, and he just says, hey, this would be, he's like, this would be cool if this was a movie, right? Let's put this out and then see if we can eventually get some studio to get on board with it, even if it's a low budget movie, and you make like a really fun, like George Romero, production or something. But there's tons, I mean, hundreds, thousands of these characters that, are happening because there was a blossoming period of art and creativity, especially in the comic scene in the 80s and 90s, when some of these creators were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and now they might be, not just old, but expiring. And what happens next? The family doesn't care. Can another creator step into those shoes? And then, of course, once it becomes public domain, anybody can. But but then it's a race because everybody can. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And and then it's just a matter of who capitalizes. I want to say exploits it the best or capitalizes the best. But I think this is a real. Yeah, but I think this right exactly like what the quality level is, and we don't know what happened with Dren Publications and the E.B. Romero children or family, but there was a lawsuit that was just blocking Dren Productions and their separate LLC from just doing whatever they want, and maybe they could have like drawn up something that says, look, we want to give you the creativity to do this because you have put some new material out and the quality level is okay. So let's just say whatever, net profits you make on anything having to do with my dad's character, that we get 33%, or they could say 20%, or they could say 50. They, the creator, Dren Productions and the LLC, they could say, well, I can't do anything. My hands are tied. If I have to give that much, I can do 10%, and that's the negotiation, whatever they come up with. And, they both need each other at that point because the family doesn't have the wherewithal to do anything. They're like, well, I don't know how to put together a comic, let alone a movie. Right. And that's the holy grail. Right. I mean, you could see Dren Productions was really like salivating. Wow. We have these, we're just like Boom Studio and Dynamite Entertainment. Now we're getting these old properties off the ground again. And, maybe we can get a studio, on the hook, to bite, at least if we get, I mean, even if you just get it optioned, that's still money in the bank for the creator. Right. And in this case, they would have to split whatever it is. And it's, it sounds like the family saw like, hey, these guys got this option. They're talking about a multi-million-dollar budget. So who optioned it? How much did they get? And how come my dad didn't get his cut?
Yeah.
So, like I say, it's all fun and games. It's all like, just, empty talk until there's, until some real money changes hands, in which, and then once that happens, everybody wants their piece. So
absolutely,
you got, there's an expression I always use. You got to take one to give one to get one.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're the license holder, you're the kid, and maybe you do something completely different for a living. Maybe you own like a hair salon or something. You have no ability to put out this creative stuff, no interest, but you control the rights. Then give it to somebody who loves the idea and loves the art and the property and the characters and is willing to put their blood, sweat, and tears into it and make something. And it's a little risky because they could shit the bed and come up with nothing, or they can make something nice. It just doesn't click. That happens too. But but if it's just sitting there in your closet not doing anything, then if you don't try, you automatically lose. That's another cliche, but we can move on from this. Kurt, what else you got in your Tilly today?
Oh, that's pretty much it. I'm actually more curious to see if you've got some material you've gleaned from the transcriptions of the past, I don't know, 10 or 12 podcasts we've done. We're in need.
I do have some new written material. Yeah. It's
Nice.
I didn't get too deep
Feed the
into.
Substack.
Right. What Kurt's talking about is he has this cool new way of transcribing our entire episodes. I guess it's not too hard, but the YouTube captioning tool allows you to save as a PDF or something everything that's said.
Riverside.
Yeah. Oh, it's Riverside. Okay. So sorry, folks,
Yeah.
you can't get this unless you sign up a membership with an app like Riverside. But he sent me like 10 episodes of us talking just like this. And what I would do with that once I get it is I would say, all right, let me look for the part where we do the turbo updates. And then I would say, all right, I'm writing a new Substack section based on the bullet point about the, pleasure robots or the sentience. And then I would take that part, I would cut and paste it into, a document, a text document. Then I just start writing, and I'm expanding the thoughts that I was spitballing with Kurt live on the air, and he's giving me feedbacks, and he's saying things like, "How about a hot air balloon?" and I'm taking
like
all that.
Right?
Well, that was the most recent one, and then I'm taking that. And I'm like, I said, as insane as it sounds, that could be a great distraction, And I'm using all these like little nuggets. And so what I have for Kurt that I can give after we're off the air today is I have some writing here that is probably 2 to 3 installments worth of prose about a new storyline that's going to be based on a character, Wee Lu, her grandmother, Reen Paw, a bad guy named the Moose, and I think I described it a little bit last week. It's going to be a conflict in the early days of Esoterra, where people are just, coming to grips with the fact that they can exercise these powers or phenomena, and they can't really do too much yet. But it's easy to change people's perceptions, and by that I mean like you can create a visual hallucination in the sky. You can create like blinding lights and distractions, and some people who follow Esoterra and train themselves on her formulas of um, microparticle manipulation will be able to harness these abilities at will, but only Esoteric can actually do things like levitate or move things or heat things up, and when she does things like that, it comes at a cost, right? Like, because when you have like a superhero and you're like, all right, she can, she can like summon the weather, right? Or there's a huge like there's a huge like suspension of disbelief, right?
Yep.
And in trying to make this like a little more scientific, and thinking about the future and technology and where nanoparticle research is going, and where our science is now, and fast forwarding 100 years, we've come up with a storyline where a couple of gifted women, Esoterra and Elevena, for example, and some others. There'll be some bad guys who have the abilities too, but they can do things that nobody else can do by using their mind, and sometimes using elements that they introduce right into an area or a region, let's say, for an event to happen. The thing that I'm going to make it is like, let's say you heat something up, and you're using like microwaves to do it, and you're going to be manipulating the nanoparticles in an area that comes at a cost. So like maybe like all the bushes in like like 4-mile radius all get dehydrated.
That's
because
cool.
you
That's
because
cool.
you're actually because energy can be neither destroyed or created,
I was
and
just going to say that. I was just going to say that. That is
right. So
yeah.
there will be a little less suspension of disbelief, but honestly, who knows what's going to happen in the future? Because I'm keeping tabs on what's going on in real science, and I'm just like flabbergasted. The Nobel Prize that was just given this year, it's all about it's all about this quantum tunneling effect and the ability of you know of dual uh, events from happening in the exact same manner, but they could be far
Jesus.
apart from each other, and it's happening in real time. And the only explanation they have for it becomes a little conceptual. I mean, if you look up like Nobel Prize winner for science in 2024, and you see the research, the top headline is that they proved that existence is not local.
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah.
people are like,
That's
what
some
does that
heavy.
mean? Poof. Yeah, what
That's
does that
heavy,
mean?
man.
But basically
Whoa.
what it means is that they've extrapolated this to mean like if you can duplicate what particles are doing in one area and the other area, and there's nothing really joining them, then that can also go across time, and that can also go across space. So it could be, feet or inches, or it could be light years, which is also incredible. And it's making them think that, how important the perception of something happening is and the measurement of something happening is. So basically what they're saying is, just to boil it down, I'll get off this because I know we're probably gonna lose some people, but basically what they're saying is, you know, if a bear craps in the woods, is anybody there to hear it? If a tree falls in the woods, is anybody there to hear it? And they're theorizing like no, like nothing actually exists unless somebody is there to perceive it or measure it,
Observe
and
it.
that includes
Yep.
our
Observe.
entire
Yep.
human history and past.
Yep.
All of
Yep.
these like artifacts that we're digging up of ancient civilizations,
Yep.
it might not have really been that way. It might just be a history that we're being fed, and who
Yeah.
knows how long time actually took. This is just this record that we have. So, we're going
Can
on
I?
standard physics to try to like make this timeline. Go ahead.
Oh, Jake. Oh, God. There's so many things about you, dear friend, that I love. And this is probably number two, just next to your pencils. But this is something we do share. This is something we do share.
Are you as
Is
nerdy as me on quantum physics and listening to all this stuff?
I think one of the things I just to warn people or also give people satisfaction, I don't feed you as much as I probably could, because I was just thinking to myself about a half a dozen responses to the last thing that you were doing, the explanation of new quantum theory and string theory and all that kind of stuff, is that everybody will basically come around and comment and say, why are you guys wasting your time with this? Why not just do a science comic book? We would probably even make a lot more money. But the thing about it is, it's, I think the most fascinating thing, and I know you have some anxiety, some like honest anxiety about technology, AI, and science advancements, and corporations being
Weapons, yeah.
heavily tied, yes, weapons, and all this mass media that you're fed. But when you go off the main highway, and even I would even say like off of roadways, socially acceptable roadways and pathways, and you start finding and reading papers or listening to lectures on YouTube or a podcast and stuff, you're going to blow your mind away, because the thing I'm zeroing in on from what you just said was, we really don't have anything official to hold right now to say that the Egyptians existed this way. It's constantly being changed because, and this is to me, this is the coolest thing when I learned this about quantum physics. Is nothing can exist unless somebody is observing it and measuring it. So even with our silly little comic book, our whole game is to get people interested in it so they read it and collect it and it exists. But for you and I, it did exist 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? There was you haven't had the physical pages.
The idea lives, it's in my head, and as much as I got on paper, Kurt has been, my partner and in a way my therapist, because he's saying, Jake, get it all down. It doesn't matter if it's a finished product. Yep. Don't worry if you're writing clean edited chapters. Just put it in note form, and we'll publish this just to create this this blockchain of documentation that keeps growing and growing, and then we could always go back and edit, and we do, and we fix stuff up, add illustrations, and make it into a going concern. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of joke and say, a comic doesn't exist unless somebody bought it and held it. Although, it create it for the creator, it exists, and and there are comics. I mean, just like I have a lot of friends, and I'm like, I'm jamming with them. We're playing some music, and I say, "Wow, man, you're a really good guitarist. Why don't you get in a band and get on stage and do something?" They're like, "Nah, I just exist, for my own playing and in my own house and my own edification." And it's like, all right, well, there's the performance aspect of it. So it's true that anybody can write something down on a piece of paper, draw something, but if that piece of paper is lost, and the person dies, the idea is lost. And what we're doing, same thing as any other creative, is we're creating something that could live on and on and on. It might only be a comic, but it might be more. I mean, look at, the way all these Star Wars worlds came alive, and you have everything from, merchandise to theme parks, and it's just, movies are coming out, and it goes on and on and on. Same thing with Disney World and all the characters, and same thing with any world.
That's different. I think I do not agree that the creator and the proprietor, the corporation, are and can exist in the same space. I think one has to exist autonomously from the other for both to exist. And I think it's going back to your friend who's a really good guitarist but doesn't want to put the time in. I think his real deep reaction is, I don't want to deal with anything other than guitar. That's just the whole thing. There are millions of stories about individuals who were just busking or doodling on a pad of paper, and the next thing you know it, a let's just say corporate entity comes in and says, "Hey, we'll publish you, we'll do this, and we'll send you on tour," and the next thing you know it, that individual is just damaged goods. That their original spontaneity is now gone. Yeah, it depends on what you're chasing career-wise. But career, once again, has nothing to do with the creative process. It shouldn't have anything to do with the creative process. If anything, I've made a living since college, going to art school, and really, in a most excellent way, figure out how to creatively solve problems. That's really what I was taught. I was taught drawing and painting and all this other stuff. But when I got out of school, I got more and more work from people who had problems that I could solve, restaurants and grocery stores and then magazines and the such. There's very little, if anything, and to be honest with you, nothing out there where I made a comic book, I gave it to a publisher, and that publisher turned around and had it made into a movie, and I was something of acclaim because I never really chased it.
Yeah, so you get out what you put in, and some people are really
Yep.
determined, and they're like, I'm going to put this comic out no matter what. We talk about if folk art. Folk art is a term that's used for like lost art
Yeah.
and art
I was
that's
thinking the
made
same
by
thing.
folk. Yeah, and somebody at some point comes along, and tries to
There's
either
a there's a
monetize
whole
it or
industry now. There's a whole industry now
there
for
is. I mean,
outsider
there's a
art
museum
and
of
folk
folk
art.
art in
A
in New
whole
York City.
yes, it's a
And
high
I love
traded
going by.
commodity.
Yeah, I love going by there. But folk art is, sometimes juxtapose magazine would cover some of these really like weird, fringy, lost folk artists, and I saw a display in a museum, in a mainstream museum, of these like panels. There was this crazy guy like in the Midwest who was drawing on the walls of his house, and he was
Yeah,
drawing
yeah.
like all of these scenes of like children playing, and it just seemed like it was like professional children's book quality, but also
Yeah.
like I think it was like during the maybe the 40s and 50s, and he did it until like nobody ever saw it, and then they decided to just like remove the
So
walls.
to sort of so to amend anybody thinking that we're stating that you need two people to see and observe something and measure it for it to exist is absolutely not correct. You are enough. You in this universe, you're enough to see it and measure it and make it exist. Whether it goes into the world of corporatization and then is monetized, is a whole nother thing. And I think one of the barriers I would love to see get closed better now because of technology is to be able to protect people from being taken advantage of, not being, because, I hear from a lot of people like, I don't get involved because I just don't have enough legal savvy. I don't know what my rights are. I don't know, and I don't know. And so that amount makes them so overwhelmed that they rather not. And I think it's a shame because, I also imagine how many things out there are just sitting in boxes, suitcases in attics and basements that
Waiting
people
to be
made,
found.
and well, to be found or to be thrown away and destroyed. I think that's
Right.
I would think. I think for every 100, one of them gets out and maybe something's done with it or something is attempted to be done with it. But I think for the most part, it's destroyed because the family's like, what? Oh God, Grandpa was always into this weirdo comic. Tried to make look how horrible, Grandpa thing. But the thing is, Grandpa could have been making a whole nother thing that could take the path of Superman or Batman. It was just
Right.
that well done. It just never got into the right pathway.
Well, and that's we could circle this back around to the Turbo story, but one theme that Kurt and I keep harping on, coming back to, is that our society, our corporate run society, and our governments, in its current form, is not very friendly to creatives. We do
Not at
not
all.
have viable marketplaces. We do not have good tools for people to cash in. I mean, uh if there was a button on our Instagram that said, give them 5 cents right now. I like what you're doing. Here's 5 cents. And that money could be
Yeah.
transferred without transaction fees and credit card
Yeah.
companies and processing, blah, blah, blah. And Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, the owners of PayPal and e-money and all that. We could have a very vibrant society of creators living in their own little homes and living in their own little domiciles, making all kinds of content, from comics to songs to dance, theater presentations, artists painting on the walls and doing that, finding their audience, getting compensated, getting subscribers. I mean,
Jake.
when you look at the models that we do have, it's like you could do a Patreon, you could do a Substack, and
Yeah, it's
these,
all bullshit.
these
It's all
these
bullshit.
gatekeepers.
So if you want, we can move over to the definitions. Well, the transition of definitions now that we're leaving art making, we are in the age of content making, and with AI, and especially what Mr. Zuckerberg's getting ready to really launch on us with his glasses, his meta glasses. All creativity at this point there's a possibility of it being subjected to what's going to be referred to as an asset. Have you heard this?
Right. It's already called assets in AI.
But I'm saying is that
AI
we're already
model.
making content. Yeah, we're already making content. We're not making art. That's already been established because the place that we're doing our best to try to make a living or try to get things out there is through these platforms that we have to pay to be on, or so on and so forth. So that's definably content. Like making a podcast on YouTube is content, even to the point of making the pages of a comic book on content. It's only when you then put it into comic book, like I always say, this is my art. This is my art. The pages I'm working on get me to my art. This is the art form right here. But now we're going to be getting to a place where, like I would even say we're going to be forced to translate our work and our creative process into making assets. I think that's what's coming down the road.
Well, those are words that you call it. It's the same thing regardless what you call it, but it depends what purpose it's for. If something's getting you to a finished product, that's content that you're producing. But when you have a finished product, you can, art is in the eye of the beholder and the reviewer and everything. And so there's a whole life that it takes on once it's created and it gets out there. And people either buy it or don't. People either find it or don't. But it's also true that everything that's out there and everything that's like public is scrapable for these AI
Yes.
learning machines, and they're going to be there's going to be a whole other world of what happens to it, and it could be fed into a giant database and just absorbed, so that when somebody says, give me a post-apocalyptic comic, and someone, it'll give you something based on what we did that they legally or illegally scraped off public, websites or the internet, and then synthesized so as to avoid any kind of copyright claim, but sufficiently altered to make it a not a derivative product. I mean, whatever the legal terms are going to be, but I mean there's big companies doing this right now. They want to be able for people to just say words, press a button, and then it turns into pictures. In order for them to do that, they need to feed in a whole bunch of different assets, right? And they get all the free assets they can, because really that's the whole point of Facebook has been a free product that makes it convenient for you to share your grandchildren pictures with your friends. But what were they getting in exchange for providing that free platform? Everyone says, oh well, they were serving up ads and they were making money. Yeah, that's kind of it. But what's their real model? Their real model is to be able to own that content and manage it for any future purpose that can make them money. And now they have that purpose, or they have one of these purposes, which is feeding them into gigantic AI learning, algorithms, so that they can, produce content based on things that humans make, and make it easier for other humans to make them if they don't have skill and talent. That's where we're at, and it's kind of crazy.
Well, I think the other thing that I can't stop thinking about is who's going to, I mean, Disney would be the first one to do it, but who's going to set up a platform, a computerized platform that a creative can log into and be paid by the hour, maybe they say the hours plus assets that they submit, and then get internalized royalties on just pumping and feeding the machine. And it doesn't have to be original thought. It can be taking something somebody else did and build on top of it, or move it off to the left or move it to the right or up and down. Because the problem they're having right now, and I'm seeing this in all of the people I'm following that follow AI and the papers and the corporations and everything, is they're now losing traction on, well, first off, there's no old assets to put into AI anymore. They've already run out. They're run dry. And legally, they're not allowed to use whatever data that if they're charging us to use ChatGPT, the things that I make in ChatGPT, they're legally not now. Whether they're abiding by this is a whole nother thing. They're not allowed to use that in order to profit, because that is theft. That's just straight up. It's not even copyright theft. It's just not. It's not paying somebody for their work, and it's encroaching on their privacy for that. But I keep coming back to this idea, like, who's going to be the genius that puts up a platform that allows people to upload original art, whether it's digitally or traditionally made. It's scanned, it's placed into, let's call it the canon, character bases and stuff like that. And they use the AI machine learning in order to hold the storyline, let's say, together, but also help propagate and expand it. So that's one thing I have a feeling we're gonna see.
Yeah, well,
and compensate creative injection, which could be anybody, anywhere in the world. You know?
Yeah, I mean, the one that's poised to do this the best is Google, because Google has immediate real-time access to the queries that people make. So I mean, nobody's going to like, pay an artist to say, all right, we need 2 sketches of shoe boxes, then we need 2 sketches of lemons, then no one's going to sit down and do that. You need to know where the demand is. What are people looking for, number one? And then you aggregate it and say, wow, we have multiple people looking for this. Let's make that. We have multiple people looking for that. Right. And then you prioritize, because, that's giving, that's really problem solving, as opposed to, just, trying to catalog everything in the fucking dictionary and everything in the encyclopedia, but this is going on. I mean, I know Adobe is also underway, trying to make these little generate buttons on all their products, so that, laymen can come in and, without any design skill, make these cards. You're seeing these apps already, like Canva and Evite and stuff, and they have all these great choices, but they want to make the tools a lot more flexible, so that anything you could, I mean, they love this tagline, of making magic. Anything you can dream of is at the touch of your fingertips. With AI, just all you gotta do is hit a button, right? And then you hit the button, you're like, what the hell is that? It's not what I expected. But with people that are like, well, I can't draw a straight line, they're like, well, hey, that's all right, I could use that. There's my invitation right there. So this is
that ties us all the way back. That ties us all the way back to the beginning of our conversation with quantum physics. Is just because you think it could exist doesn't mean it will exist properly.
Right, that's what I'm saying about Google, right? Like Google or big search engine, I mean, you could have ChatGPT might also be the place for it. They know what people are asking for. And if they said, all right, here's a new tool that'll make pictures instead of like words, and then you take all the data, what are people asking for? And then they're like, hey, we got to really set out and get some of these things into our database of what people are asking for, so we can get our computers to generate something that'll because at the end you always have feedback, right? You can say, did you like, will you participate in a survey, after this is over?
Mm-hmm.
Did you like, was this helpful? Thumbs up, thumbs down. And they have all those tools. And you can see,
the only way, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the only way somebody can truly be creative is by the experimentation process. It's not as easy as thinking up words or having ideas or gaining access to ideas and then propagating an amazing amount of visual art. I think even before AI, art overall was being subjected to people not being able to take things from the past that have already been done. Like, let's just take abstract expressionism, for instance. It's hard to do abstract expressionism. Everybody thinks when they see Jackson Pollock, oh, my kid can do that. But the moment you dive into what Braque and Picasso came up with in Cubism, and you work with Cubism towards what the Americans were trying to accomplish as artists, and abstract expressionism and those artists, all those artists in abstract expressionism don't share anything other than Cubism as a model. In other words, the multifacetedness of seeing something three-dimensionally on a two-dimensional surface. It just doesn't need representation.
Yeah, I mean,
now when you take that and you apply it to the fine arts, you very, very rarely, other than Cecily Brown, look her up. She's the one that's been able to freaking toe that line to the next level. So,
yeah, well, you have all of these great art movements like Cubism and abstract expressionism, and then you might even plug in a name like Van Gogh or Pollock and everything, and it's just going to boil down to they're just going to be a button and a filter, and
I disagree.
people are like,
I disagree. That's a visual component. That's a visual component. It's not expanding upon it. It's not expanding upon, it's replicating. And those are two different processes in creativity. One is lesser than the other. That's the unfortunate part. Just because something looks cool doesn't mean it's been made well. It doesn't. It does not. It does not. It does not.
You mean it might be?
That's not the creative process. No. I mean, I'm not saying my judgment on something that is or isn't cool would then cause everybody to be negated that it is cool. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the value, the deep value of what we see in Van Gogh's work is very difficult to replicate. Unless you're going to take it, grok it, and then try to go one up on. But a human has to impulsively put that one up on in taking a chance. Computers cannot do that.
Yeah, I mean, we have so many renditions at this point of like Van Gogh's Starry Night. I mean, every kid in school was given an assignment. Okay, make make something in the style of Starry Night, and you're supposed to use like heavy-handed pats of paint and stuff, and but and it's a great exercise, but then you also have like, all right, someone's like, okay, we're making a mailer for our postcard, for our tool and die company. Let's hit the button to make it look like Van Gogh, and then maybe we'll get some.
I still don't think it's gonna. I mean, you could create and that's a stylized effect. That's really all that is right now, and they're able to replicate that even better than it was, 2 years
it's something
ago,
Van Gogh created and put into the world, and it's there now,
But he did it. He did it for so many other reasons than art making. I mean, he was doing it for religious, spiritual context because he came from a minister's father, his father was a minister. He tried to become a minister. He was living purposely with the destitute and everything. But the only thing he could feel like he could contribute to society was to make these images, as bad as they were back then, because he didn't sell anything. And then all of a sudden, somewhere, probably in the 1970s or 80s, some art consortium says, you know what? We need something better than this whole Leonardo da Vinci and Picasso thing. You know what? Did you see that painting down in Gallery 32 that has those sunflowers in it? That guy's pretty cool. Why don't we try throwing that at the human race? The next thing you know, it's just we're being over subjected to, and now
we could do a whole
those
episode.
Paintings are now making trillions of dollars.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on the fickle eccentricities of the high-end art market and the most valuable paintings ever sold, and what goes into that. You have complete insanity on three fronts. One is the creative.
Now it's a commodity.
Right, exactly. And it's also, it's also a great tax shelter too, until they start taxing unrealized capital gains. You can tie up, a fortune in high-end Renaissance art, have it sitting on your walls, and then never have to pay taxes on it, and it's appreciating like crazy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on, but the eccentricities of the there's a documentary that I recommend called The Value of Everything, and it spotlights a couple of famous painters and creators, one of which I think is Jeff Koons, and there's a couple other names that and then it shows how crazy they are in their creative process. Then it shows the buyers, and these people are insane. They're worth billions of dollars, and they collecting art, millions or billions sometimes, and they go to Christie's and Sotheby's and they decide what they're going to bid on, and they're market makers, they're market movers. If somebody buys Jean-Michel Basquiat for 110 million, now all the other Basquiat is worth tens of millions. And they set that precedent, and they have this incredible power to move the chess pieces around and say, okay, this artist is hot right now, and this artist it's gaining in leaps and bounds. This artist might be dead for 100 years, but all of a sudden they're a cult find, and we're going to give them a high buy rating. So you have the buyers. Then the third X factor in this just complete insanity is the brokers, right? These are the in-between guys, and they're the ones that push particular art and particular pieces on their clients. So it's just a fascinating world to look at, because the dollar amounts, it's like the GDP of small nations, that's being changed hands by Christie's and Sotheby's in these big auctions of these art pieces. And sometimes it's like, all right, well, this is Rembrandt, this is a famous Renaissance name, and the art is well reviewed and it's historic and famous. But sometimes you have an artist coming out of left field, and they're like, this is a Kenyan 38-year-old lesbian who lives in San Francisco, and she's producing pieces that have sold in the $300,000 range for the last 7 years, and now we're going to push her. We're going to give her a leap and bound, and now we're going to try to push her to our big whale clients, and then the next thing you know, her pieces are selling for 3 and 4 million, and that happens every day. That happens every day. Yeah,
Jake. So we're coming up on an hour. It's not like we have anything pressing to get to, but the one thing I kind of would like us to share with one another, and I want to make a statement, and I really just want you to be as honest as possible, which I can't see how you're not going to be. But do you undeniably, as a creative person, see Turbo Pit Fighter as your art first? Like this is something you have to make, or are you product driven? What beats out in your mind day in and day out when you approach Turbo Pit Fighter?
Well, to me, Turbo Pit Fighter is a concept that I want to live on. That's the number one thing. And after I'm
Nice.
dead and gone, what did you do with your life? And so, Turbo Pit Fighter will be something that I put a lot of work into for years. That will be in some form, depending how long I live and how productive I'm able to be, and if my hand keeps working and my eyes keep working. That there, I hope there to be a graphic novel on the shelves, one for the ages. And, if not, then a bunch of floppies, that try to get you there. And then I also want to do a bunch of other series too, a bunch of other, ideas. But, this is the main one, the flagship. And, it's, to me, it's not a matter of what you call it. It's a project, it's a passion, it's some people say it's it's a hobby. Some people say it's a, you know, uh, it's a
Waste of
reason for
time.
living. The French word, vivant de jour, whatever. Um,
Whoa.
but that's subjective. People can call it what they want. You can call it a comic book. You can say this is a narrative. You can say it's a story. I'm trying to think about it cinematically, as I do it, just because I'm a big fan of cinema, and a lot of this is inspired, by the Road Warrior movie, which just really means a lot to me. But it's also like taking it much farther, and the possibilities of thinking what the future really could be like. And there's a lot of science in it. There's a lot of futurism in it, which is just kind of like, you know uh, taking human nature and science and putting them together, and making predictions of what you think is going to happen and when. And it's just creativity, right? Sometimes it's just fun, and we're putting in like cheeky lines and camp, and sometimes it's just blatant violence, or blatant TNA, or the latest craze is like fit women and showing off muscles and stuff. But we're just a product of our making, and this is stuff that's coming out of me. Um and um you know and I think it's going to be a really good finished product if we can defy old Satan, and outlive our and live long enough to finish the product. I think the 6 issue encapsulation of the what will make up the graphic novel, I would be thrilled. I can die happy. And the process along the way making it is what we're doing here on the podcast. All these
Right.
conversations that we're having, we're gonna have one next week, we have one this week. It's a lot of fun to do as you're drawing. I just finished up this page. I'm moving on to the next page. I'm doing roughs here. um, we didn't do a turbo update this week, but we'll do one maybe next week about what's happening in the story and what it means, and how the story just keeps on going. But yeah, it's an interesting question. Like, what motivates people? Some people, Stan and Jack, they were just out to pay their rent, make a buck, feed their
Yeah.
kids. They
Yeah.
thought it was a joke, Well, Thor
Yeah.
and Silver Surfer and Mr. Fantastic, right? It was all just like, all right, I gotta put something on the page. The blank paper staring at me. I gotta put something on here because we have something that has to go to press on Tuesday. And they inadvertently created a world of, they unleashed like a whole industry of creative people, a lot of whom do it for the love, not the money.
Yeah.
And I think that's admirable. And then and there are a lucky few, who actually pay their rent so they can actually do it more hours per day. I love that, that people are able to do that. And that's the convergence of business and art, where art is something that people are making because they have something to say and they need to get it out, and business being like, hey, there's a lot of fans that love this crap and they're buying it like crazy, and now all of a sudden you have 60K a year or 80K a year coming in if you can churn this stuff out on a regular schedule. Or maybe more, maybe less. It all depends, the ups and downs. That's why I say the markets are fickle, and what's hot one minute might not be hot the next minute. There are a lot of hacks out here, that are trying to jump on fads or try to co-opt, what other people are doing. And then there are people who are just genuinely inspired by what other people are doing, and that's what makes the world go around. We're all a product of our influences, and and our motivation and our ambition and how we synthesize things and create it for another audience. So
well said.
Here we are, and I'm excited to go over the I don't know if I have any sketches. I didn't bring my pad downstairs, but I'm excited to go over this new writing I've been doing. Let me see if this gives me a character count. No, I would have to. Hold on. I'm gonna go to real quick. I'm typing in word counter in Google, and I'm just gonna drop this in and see how much we get. And it says I have 3,000 words to give you.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, some of these are rough notes, but it's about 3,000. And
it's all right.
I don't know what form of editing to put it in. I have chapter 1 and chapter 2. Oh, and they wanted to call it like Showdown at Reen Paw's Farm or something, but that doesn't really grab you. But it's going to be a little portion of the timeline where society is undergoing downfall and there's protests. It's really going to be about some protesters of the future who have these collectives. We spoke about the cults and how everyone's going to have to rely on cults because the government's not going to be all there to provide services like guaranteed food, water, welfare, anything. A lot is gonna fall to cults and a lot of people are not going to survive, obviously, but then there's going to be this great mega apocalypse, and that's going to be later when the Turbo story kicks off, when they start the geographical thinning of the big cities and the surrounding areas. So depending where you live. I mean, Kurt, man, what's going on with the news, man? You watching these headlines? You got Asheville, North Carolina, that just got washed away last night, the day before yesterday. Gone. Thousands of homes.
It's my only response is when are they going to wake up, whoever they are? Because my wife.
Well, it should be now.
God bless her. Well, these are things that need to be placed. They need to be put in place. There needs to be awareness, education. There needs to be action. There needs to be. There's just the only thing I'm concerned about is you hear and see things on news platforms, and their responsibility is to sell you pharmaceuticals to help you deal with your depression and anxiety. So they feed you more depression and anxiety. I say this to my wife every time. Luckily for both of us, we're not that
Watch this newscast and then buy the pharmaceuticals in the commercial.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Good,
So
yeah,
unless unless you're down in somewhere, because anyhow, I think anything out there happening is horrible, and I could list right off the top of my head 16 things that I think that has happened in the last 24 hours. But I also have to stay. I have to stay at an objective point of view where it's like, what can I do about it? And I'm willing to do something about it, whatever it is. But at the same time, when are they going to get their shit together and start moving into a globally healthier way of moving? Because I think the proof is in the pudding that we just don't need a lot of this archaic nonsense in leadership and it's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah, my record producer friend Rick, he's from Woodlawn in the Bronx. He would say the truth is in the pudding. We just to timestamp this. Since our last episode, we had Hurricane Helene hit landfall, and it kind of smashed into Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. We don't even know the extent. I know dozens of people are dead, mostly from falling trees. A lot of people were told to evacuate their areas.
Yeah.
I know Sarasota and Tallahassee were affected, but this is going way inland. The Atlanta area is affected, Georgia, and this was a big storm. As big as we've had in years. Where the property damage is going to be so high and so extensive that there's going to be arguments within the government about aid, people to rebuild, emergency management, FEMA, and then there's going to be a lot of hand wringing in the insurance industry. Are we, people that had flood insurance? Well, they might get a payout, but they're not going to get flood insurance anymore. And the companies are no longer offering it because there's just too much damage. There's no way to make a profit.
There's too many floods.
Right, and the
flood
government
every
is saying,
year.
and the government is saying, well, you have to be fair to people. You need to be able to offer flood insurance. As a matter of fact, we can't even. The banks can't even finance their loans and their mortgages unless they have insurance, right? And so then the government has to back those loans because the private banks won't back it, the private insurance won't back it. And basically, that moves us, I don't care what you think, that moves us towards socialism. And, for all the people, especially in the red states that are, crying about socialism, it's a necessity now to save these people so that they have somewhere to live and to rebuild these people, so that they have somewhere to live because the private markets aren't doing it. And I take all these lessons into our sci-fi thriller here, because this is only going one way where, the people, the haves are going to have more and the have-nots are going to have less. And I think that's just going to be exacerbated for decades and centuries to come unless we really retool, our way of organizing society. And I don't think it's very hard to do. I just think, there's a lot of resistance to it that is never, ever going to relinquish power. And
well,
so
the biggest fallibility of humans is generationally, I think, we just have an impossibility of being able to agree. And I'm not even talking about like 100% agreement. I'm talking about 30% agreement. It seems like now that we live in this hyperbolic state of like too much information, too often, too tedious to everybody's surrendering to their politicians and their bosses and the corporations they work with and everything.
And their charismatic leaders and their their fake propaganda
so there's
on both sides.
The thing I just say, I say constantly, and I also remind my wife, is that we have to, as individuals, do the best in being as good to people as possible that are around us. And that's really where it has to start. So if you have an opportunity to be mean, maybe not. Don't do it. Just maybe leave it alone.
Well,
we're
saying Yeah,
you know what I mean?
you
Like,
you
open
have
a door for
that
somebody,
tendency.
buy the person behind you a cup of coffee. These are the things that have to pave the global sense of individuals forward. You're never going to get anybody, corporate, political, or the other religious leader or something, to call the way forward for everybody to move forward. We've proven that as a human species time and time and time again. The thing that has always prevailed is the human's individual sense of survival and doing right or good, however you want to categorize it. And I just had a recent situation where I could have really just been starting a ball of meanness, if you will, with some very close people in my life. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to try something new. I'm just going to leave it alone and let it go. It'll all pass. It'll all pass.
Yeah. How do we manage our human interactions? And have we learned anything? Being so-called
As individuals.
the
As
most so-called
individuals.
advanced civilization, with all of these historic lessons laid out before us. What's
Yeah.
happening, and in the 2020s, Kurt and I are here to report it's a mess. Like we just had the New York City mayor was just arrested in a sprawling, scheme of straw donations, $10 million, accused of ripping off the taxpayer in matching funds for donations that were made by foreign corporations in the name of individuals, so that he got 8-to-1 matching funds. And now he won't step down. And we're going through this just in the last 48 hours. My boss, who is the commissioner of education in New York City schools, resigned like 2 days before the indictment came down. And this guy is all in it, with the patronage jobs, and giving Eric Adams' girlfriend like a $25,000 raise, and in a job that they say she hasn't shown up for since last Thanksgiving. And this is like the highest levels of government, where I live. And in 2024, we have learned nothing. We have gone nowhere. And these people get put in power essentially for one reason, is to benefit the powerful, and the donations that they make. I mean, this is how he got busted for taking this illicit money from these rich people that wanted favors. And in this case, it was like the Turkish government and the Turkish companies and Turkish nationals and construction companies. But this is just one politician one day. You go to Mark Robinson in North Carolina, you got a whole other thing going on. And these scandals are unfolding. You have the senator of New Jersey was just indicted and just convicted, and taking.
Well, you also have to say you also have to say in one sense, like, and I really we do have to wrap up, but it's like you kind of have to have and I have this just overwhelming sense of optimism when it seems like insurmountable is going to crash us, is that, well, at least that's happening. You know what I mean? At least they're being indicted.
Yeah, at least they're arresting them,
through
right?
through our federal judicial situation. Yes, you know what I mean? It's all you can do. But
they're
I just really want to leave.
It takes years.
I want to leave on this note. One of the things we do often talk about is, and I take this to heart pretty much every time I sit down to be creative, is you can't beat what's happening on the news for sci-fi, fantasy, and post-apocalypse. You can't. And so there is doubt at times where I think, like, well, why even waste your time and energy trying to match what's going on out there? But to give context to people, about what Jake and I are doing here, is we're dealing with how we were brought up, definitely with media, comics and cartoons and movies and stuff like that. And then two, the form of expression being comic books to tell a story with pictures. But the three, to also kind of help us, deal with what's going on, And I just had a great interview with Jamie Barrows, who did Crom. He was the leader of the Crom, Brutal Blade of Crom zine anthology, and he works with kids that have learning disabilities. But he always says, like, he starts the projects like, what's going on? How can I be dealing with this and stuff? And so, if there's anything, if you've made it this far, if you just jumped on because it's live and you're like, who the heck are these guys and what they're doing? Number 1 through 3 of why we're doing this, Jake and I, is to encourage others to do it. And Jake and I have said, and
no, it's a warning
over and over again, we want people to work with us. So collaboration. So with that being said, let's try to take this out in the next minute or two, because there's always next week, and like and subscribe to help keep this thing moving forward. But in the comments, if you really do have questions or you have something you feel like you can contribute, do it. There's a link also to our Substack. Join that. You'll see a lot more of the depth of what Jake's gotten himself into when it comes to dealing with what's going on and translating it into what's probably going to be one of the greatest black and white indie comic books to come out in years. So when it does come out. But that's all I got, Jake. We'll let these people get back to reading comics, making them if they choose. What do you have for these good people on the way out?
Just a couple plugs. Check out our other series, Comics That Influence, where we do cool flip throughs. We have our Indie Creator Exchange, where we do interviews and also flip throughs of particular comics that are made by the people that we sit down with. And I also want to promote our Substack. If you want a weekly installment in your inbox of some writing with some sketches and illustrations, and you can see all of this prose and text unfolding in real time. We have our end of the world timeline and all of our bullet points. I decided I'm going to jump into the sentience next. But the
cool.
last bullet point that I've been working on was the Esoterra, and we haven't really got to the Hellclaw and Chromita part of it. So some of these bullet points are going to have some sub bullets. But yes, what Kurt was saying about collabs, if you are a writer, if you are an artist, if you are an inker, if you're a colorist, letterer, and you don't have a project to work on, and you just want to get either a resume builder, or in some cases we are, going to be able to provide a page rate for some 6-pagers, some teasers. This is a rough for the Pitch Blend story, and the Reen Paw is coming out next. So we have 2 characters that you could take over. You could, if you like to pencil, or if you want to ink, we would have to, I guess, wait till the stuff is penciled first. But get in touch and say, hey, I'm willing to check out some of your free writing that you're offering in exchange for being a collaborator on the end of the world timeline. And you can read a lot more about that on doommags.substack.com. All of our links obviously are in our underneath in our comments and in our bio. So we'll see you guys next week. And I'm just trying to get back in focus here. Boom. There we go.
All right, Jake. I will see you next Sunday.
See you next Sunday.